Yep, they're here.
It's great that we've got John back with us today. And Joel, you're our constant, which is fantastic. It's great that we've got you here every time. John, we're really very fortunate that it's you presenting this. You know, as the team here knows, and a lot of people laugh at me because I'm always reading or listening to podcasts, but you hear the name John Hollingsworth come up all the time when there is an expert that is stuff when it comes to EDI. Just yesterday, I was at a school having a learning walk, and you know, they also shared their DataWORKS posters, and they talked about an expert called John Hollingsworth, and I thought, well, we know exactly who John is. So, John, thank you for taking the time. We know it's late in the evening for you guys, and you're staying up with us to teach us and to guide us more. So, thank you very much.
All right, I think we're ready to start. If any of you were following along with a handout or looking at it on your computer, we're on slide number 35. As we said before, remember EDI is two things, design and delivery. The design is the lesson components. The delivery is how you teach the lesson. And basically you teach with the student engagement. Every time you put up the learning objective, the concept definitions, the problems, you pronounce words, you track, you use gestures, pair shares, your attention signal, whiteboards, whenever you can use whiteboards for short answers. And we always have the students answer in complete sentences. Now we want to go on a little bit further today, and we'll go do checking for understanding and effective feedback. So let's go to checking for understanding right now. And let's look at right here. Okay, there's a little definition up here. I'll read it and then you can read it after me. What is checking for understanding? Verify students are learning while you're teaching. So let's read that together. Ready to go. Verify students are learning while you're teaching. So this means you ask questions every few minutes during the lesson and to make sure the students are following along. And really, if they can't answer the questions, you need to reteach, you need to slow down. If the responses are really very strong, you can actually speed up the lesson. So you're making instructional decisions based on what the students are telling you and how they answer their questions. And then sometimes when you answer questions, if students are stuck or they're not quite there yet, you don't always need to reteach the whole class. You can provide feedback to the students. Here's one good one I may have mentioned last time. Let's read the second bullet together. Ready, go. I'll come back to you. And this is a great one when students are maybe stuck or they're not quite ready or somebody says, I'll come back to you, listen to those students and I'll come back to you. So all of this goes together, the lesson components, the delivery strategies, why you use the components, and then the checking for understanding. And I think, Joel, in the book, I said do checking for understanding about every 2 minutes. And you don't use a clock really, but you use it every time you taught a little section. And you'll see today we have kind of built-in questions too. The questions actually should be built in your lesson as you go. All right, so let's go down and we'll look at the page right here. Checking for understanding, verify your students are learning what you're teaching while you're teaching. So we made up this little acronym TAPPLE, T-A-P-P-L-E. Let's try to read it all together. So the first T stands for go. Teach first before you ask the question so students are equipped to respond. Now, I don't know if you have this idea of providing equal opportunity for all students. That's one of our ideas. We want every student to be able to answer. And one reason they can do that is because we always teach first. And let's not start out this who knows. Today we will describe characters. Who knows what a character is? No, we're going to teach what a character is first, give the definitions, some examples, and then ask some questions about it. Okay, so this is equal opportunity. Everybody can answer because they're measuring what you're teaching as opposed to their background knowledge. Okay, just right here, like I said, you're measuring real-time learning and not the background knowledge of the students. This who knows is just measuring background knowledge. And I will tell you, when you start doing that who knows, I think, Joel, you've seen it also, students start making guesses, and then students are hearing those incorrect responses. It's better to hear right off the bat the correct answers that you've provided, the correct information right off.
Well, John,
okay,
don't forget one of the worst sins we've ever seen is a teacher's like, who knows? Who knows? Come on, guys, try harder. Who knows what this word is? Come on, try harder, right?
Yeah, Joel, you remember that actual one we saw was photosynthesis. And the objective was describe the process of photosynthesis. The teacher's very next question was, who knows what photosynthesis is? And only 2 students raised their hand, and her feedback was, think harder. You should know what it is. Think harder. That was her strategy. And then finally, she called one of the students with a hand up because that was there was only 1 or 2. And he said, oh, I know what that is. It's when plants bend to light. That's not photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is when we use sunlight, we use carbon dioxide, we give off oxygen and other things. That's how plants make food. And so the student said it was plants bending to light. She kind of bluffed over that and moved forward. And then Joel, by the end of the lesson, she asked, what is photosynthesis? And the student said, plants bending to light. We're bending towards the light. It was almost unbelievable. And I remember in the brain research, that idea that we learn that, or we remember the early things in the lesson, that prime learning time. So anyway, don't start with a guessing game. Don't start with a guessing game. Let's have the A's tell the B's. What's one of the characteristics I mean by teach first? It'd be something right here. So A's, explain a little bit what that teach first means. A's to B's.
All right, switch partners, B's to A's now. Come on.
Okay, yeah, and I used to, when I do my training, I'd always start out, I usually say, I'm going to ask checking for understanding questions. And the teacher's so nervous, oh, you're not going to ask questions, are you? And I said, no, but I'll always teach first. You'll always know the answer. You'll always have the information. So that's the way good teaching works. You're providing information and you're measuring where the students are actually absorbing the information. Okay, let's look at the next one. I think it's big enough we can all read it. Ready to go. Ask a question specific to what you just taught. The problem with this, what some teachers tend to do is they ask these general, what I call opinion questions. Does everybody understand? Does it make sense? Does anybody have a question? Thumbs up, thumbs down if you're following. The younger students don't have the cognition to know whether they know or not. Older students are not going to raise their hand. So when you say that, and it's also asking opinions. See, when you ask a real question, okay, write on your whiteboards, what's the first step to solving this, or what's the definition of this? Then you're actually measuring if the students can answer something. So make sure you do something as a very specific question and not this, are you following me? And I actually saw a teacher do that one time. I think every slide says, is everybody following me? And everybody nodded their head. Everybody following me? And she must have done this for 15 or 20 times during the lesson. And no one ever asked a question. She never answered a question. And she thought she was really checking for understanding every time, but never actually got a response. It was just, does everybody follow? Does it make sense? Is it good? So make sure we're not doing that student opinions. The type of questions we ask, we kind of vary, but depending on which part of the lesson we're in. And let me just flip this first page here. So when we do concept development, we're really asking the students to apply the concepts to an example. So if you're teaching a noun, you might have, which is an example of a noun? And you've got 2 words up there and you have to pick the 2 of them. Why is dog an example of a noun? Remember, you've already taught a noun is a word that names a person, a place, or a thing. So we've got the definition up there. Now, you might give an example of a noun and a verb or something and say, what's the difference between the 2? And this is a very easy one to use. Write a noun on your whiteboard and be ready to tell me why it's a noun. And so your sentence frame should be, my word is a noun because. And of course, we've already taught it's a noun because what? It's a person or a place or a thing. And you can add or an idea depending on your grade level. Now, the draw an example could be a good one. Draw an example of a rectangle on your whiteboard and be ready to explain why it's a rectangle. Draw a triangle, draw a circle, draw an acute angle. So sometimes in math, or what the draw an example can work also. You can have visuals here, which is an example of something for volume or something for surface area or something else. And the last one, of course, in your own words, what is a noun? And you've already given the definition, and you're trying to see if they can paraphrase that in their own words. And the fallback is you can read it, come up with your own definition, but you can read it off the page if you need to. All right, so let's look at a couple right here, because I've got an example of here if I can find it, because I've actually got the noun lesson up here. And let's just look at it for a second. Let's see if I can get it in the, oh, it's right here. Yeah. Okay. I think I had it, there's actually a couple in here. Let's give an example here. Yeah, remember we said a noun is a word that names a person, place, or thing. I've got an example, a person. My teacher is nice. So teacher is what? A person. We have a place, the beach. Let's read the sentence together, students. I want to drive to the beach. The beach is what? It's a place. And the last one is a thing. Let's read our example. The dog chased the soccer ball. So that would be a thing. And we have our gesture. Let's read it together and we'll use our hands. Let me do it first. A noun is a word that names a person. Can you point to yourself? A person. Right? A place. Can you point out like this? Let me get my hands up a little bit. Or a thing. I'm doing it like this. Okay. So now, name an example of a person. Can you write on your whiteboard? Now remember, person is not just teacher. It could be John. It could be Sylvia, my uncle, my aunt, the president, anything like that. So write on your whiteboard. Let's do it right now. Do you have your whiteboards ready?
Yeah.
Okay, write an example of a noun that is a person. And I have a sentence frame. An example of a person is, right? And of course, what we mean is this is a noun. Okay. So can you turn to your partner? An example of a person is, let's have the A's explained to B and the B's explained to A. Okay. And I could call in somebody and you could give it, actually, Joel, I would rephrase this sentence frame. We should have a noun is. We should have the vocabulary in it. Okay, then we're doing the lesson, so we can do all three checking for understanding, a place, a noun that's a place, and we can do a noun that is a thing.
So
then we actually have the last one.
Right. Let me stop you right there, John, because right now we're doing TAPL, right? And TAPL's teach first and ask the question. So what you've just shown us right now is that this is a concept development that we're working on right now. You know, we did track with me, read with me, and noun is a word that person, place, or thing. Then this is our engagement norms, right? You did our engagement norms. Then you did the gesture. You had our students do the gestures as well. Then you modeled your thinking when you showed them a person. You modeled your thinking when you did place. You modeled your thinking when you did thing. And now you're asking a question. But you're not asking a question in regards to who's the person in this picture? It's a teacher. You're not asking a recall question. You're asking an application question, aren't you? And you're practicing the sentence frame that and we're going to do a person and a person, you know, your aunt is an example of a person because, and then give your reasons why. So what we're doing is TAPL, and now we're asking a question. You've taught, and now we ask a question. And when you taught, you did the engagement norms, didn't you?
That's right. I had this read this. A real teaching, I would spend more time on this. But yeah, read it. I would have us correlate read it. I gave the gesture. I had you do the gesture together. Okay. I would give. This is one example. I give a couple more. Policeman, aunt, uncle, Joe, Sylvia. Okay, beach. We could give some other examples. The school, the cafeteria. Okay, and then we have our checking for understanding. But you can see we have the definitions, the examples, and we go right to the checking for understanding. Now, and I was doing this because what I was saying was this is the checking for understanding for concept development. We apply it to an example. Okay, and let's just look at one more very quickly. I've got one up here for prefixes. And let's see what we got for our definitions for prefixes. I think we're right here. And remember what I said? Well, I'm not going to teach the whole thing. Well, a prefix is a letter added, letters added to the beginning of the word, right? To change its meaning. I think we taught this a little bit last time. A prefix has a similar meaning in all words. So if we've got the prefix RE, that means we're going to do it again. Let's read our examples. Reuse, redo, rebuild. So this means what? We're going to use it again. We're going to do it again. We're going to build it again. And here's some examples. So we would spend a few minutes there. Now we're ready to do. And remember I just said one of our things that we can use, let's see, look at our examples. Distinguish between example and non-example right here. So we've got it right here. I forgot to do this, Joel, the non-example. Students, sometimes you see the letters that are the prefixes on a word. Not every word with those two letters is a prefix. Remember, a prefix is a word we add to an existing word to change its meaning. So the word RE might show up in a word, but not every word that has the prefix. It's not actually a prefix. It's just the two letters being used. Okay, so remember the definition, a group of letters added to the beginning of a word to change its meaning. So let's get our whiteboards out there one more time. And let's read the question together. Ready? Which word has a prefix? Explain. So get on your whiteboards, write A or B. Which word has a prefix?
And of course, my gentle teachers, don't forget metacognition. You know, little things like, all right, guys, we're going to whiteboards out. You already have your procedures in place. It's time to vote. We need to hear your voice. You know, whatever metacognition you like to use. But I want you to write A if you think retry. Write A nice and big on your whiteboard if you think it's retry, which has a prefix. Or write B nice and big on your whiteboard if you think ready has a prefix.
Right.
And then we go 1, 2, 3, chin it.
Chin it. Okay, let's do that. Chin it. Oh, wait, did we do the pair share? Let's have B's go first this time. Blank has a prefix because. So explain to your partner which word has a prefix and how do you know? Okay, let's let the other partner explain. Vanessa, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Can you call a teacher right now?
Okay. Martha, can you please explain which word has a prefix and why?
I chose A because A has a prefix because it is doing something again.
Okay, very good. Now here's a trick you can use sometimes if you want to get a quick higher order question, use the reverse logic. So everybody, I want you to think for a second, why is ready not a word with a prefix? Let's have the A's explained to B. Why is ready not a word with a prefix? All right, let's have the other partner go. Ready does not have a prefix because. Call for the boards up.
So write your response for the non-example.
And why is ready not a prefix?
Addy isn't a word in its own right, so therefore RE is not a prefix.
Right, and when you elaborate as a teacher, yeah, it's not a prefix added to change the meaning of a word in a consistent way. Yeah, okay, great. So have that ready, that good logic. I do that a couple things if you've got a few advanced students. Now, don't use this as a follow-up to one question. So why is the other one wrong? That way you don't get the pair share. Make sure you ask the question to the whole class. Let everybody think about it, pair share, and then boards come up and call somebody. Okay. I've also done this when students get really good and you're doing second or third, I mean, you're getting 100% correct answers. So sometimes, oh, I see everybody's got the correct answer A. So I'm going to change the question. So why is B not a word with a prefix? Anyway, use that sometime if you need that. All right. So now let's go back and look at what we were just doing. Okay. So now I want everyone to write something they teach on their whiteboard. Just write one word. Nouns, pronouns, characters, character traits, cause and effect, text structure, main idea, anything. Just write one word. See if you can write a checking for understanding question. Now, you've already taught what it means. So if you had one like volume, you could have two little drawings there, like a cardboard box and a flat piece of paper. So which one, A or B, would show volume? Okay, or you could have the volume formula. Length times width times height, or you could have length times width. Okay, so that could be your two choices, right, that you could apply some definition. So see if you can write a checking for understanding question right now that you're not asking them to calculate the volume, it's something applied to the definition of volume. Vanessa, can you just call a couple of people so I can hear their questions?
Okay, Rachel.
My question was, how do you end a sentence? and with an A, B answer for A capital letter or B full stop.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's a perfect one. Okay, you're not asking him to actually do it to a sentence, just conceptually how to do it. Okay, now I want to see if you can write a sentence frame to go with it. And the sentence frame is not my answer is A, right? Her one should be, we end a sentence with a blank. And it should be something that's really kind of a conceptual response.
John, would that be something like blank is the character in the story because?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's talking, she's talking or doing something. The forest is a setting because where the story takes place. Dog is a noun because it names a thing. So you should have a question and a sentence frame. Oh, you're already doing the pair share. I didn't even have to cue you.
Lauren's hiding her chin. That's your chin. I'm just joking, so I can see it. Okay, so Christina, can you please come up?
My question is, why is the rule of three a persuasive device? And the sentence frame is blank is a persuasive device because.
Okay. So you think we could give this to the class right now and they could answer that question? Can you do it right now? Have the class read it after you, then cue them to write their answers on their whiteboard, then cue them to do the pair share with your sentence frame.
Can you guys please get your pointer fingers out and read after me? Why is the rule of three a persuasive device? Your turn. Now, I need you guys to answer that on your whiteboard using this sentence frame. Track your fingers. Blank is a persuasive device because, and then put your answer down. Okay.
Great. So you do that.
If you take section after.
Thanks, Liz.
Rule of three is when you give
But yeah, when you give like an example is, the beach is nice because it is sunny, calming, and relaxing. It's like three examples.
Why?
Yeah.
It's the one thing.
You're not just saying one reason why the beach is amazing. You've got three reasons.
Yeah.
And fill in your one persuasive paragraph.
Can you tell we're preparing for that one?
Yeah. Okay, so be kind and invite a senior teacher to respond.
Okay.
Now cue who goes first in your pair share. Is it A or B? Who should start the pair share?
In your pair shares, can we have A share the, so say their sentence, frame to the B person, and B, you'll go. You'll have 10 seconds. Thank you. All right, back to me. Thank you. Who was talking? That's beautiful. Can I please get Jessica?
The rule of three is a
Actually, sorry, Jessica, what did B say?
It's funny. She said rule of three is a persuasive device because it gives three examples to explain the reasoning.
And B answered the same.
That's the same. But we actually said the next one gave. Wow.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, very good. We need a round of applause for that.
Yeah.
All right.
That was amazing. There was a lot of great things we saw. We saw the pair share. I like that they did timing. I mean, they were doing all the engagement norms. That was really good. That was good.
Okay. Now remember what we do. I like having the students read the question, and then we have them write it on whiteboards and pair share. All right, and then we call out for people to report out. Later we'll go on the effective feedback when we have the wrong answers. Let's do one more thing right now. Let's have the B partners take your question and pretend you're giving it to your partner, A part. Just do it one-on-one. So let's have the B partners do your question, read it, have your partner read it, pretend you're doing the pair share, have your partner show the answer on the whiteboard and have them respond with a complete sentence. If they don't respond, it's your job as a teacher to cue them how to answer the questions. A lot of students will just they'll say B. And then no, tell me how do you know it's B? Well, I wrote B. No, remember this, the character is blank because. So you'll have to do that in the classroom. So let's have the B partner, I said right now, the B partner, pretend you're the teacher, hold up your question just like the prior teacher did, and just do it one-on-one. Okay, go ahead.
Read it.
Oh, read it after me.
Yeah. Which is an example of a rhetoric question.
Okay, so let's just remember the little rhythm. Have the students read the question and read the answers, okay? And then what you're going to have them get their whiteboards out. Now, there's two ways of doing this. There's pair sharing and then writing your answer, or write your answer on your board and then pair share. And it kind of depends on how much scaffolding you want to do. If you let the students completely pair share together, then they kind of write the same answer and they've got it. If you let them write the answer first and then pair share, it's a little more individual accountability, but you still expect the students to correct each other's answers. So I've seen it both ways. I've also seen a third one where they hold up the answers first before they pair share, and the teacher makes an early judgment call whether to reteach or not. So it's usually, let me see all your answers. Okay, turn to your partner and explain. Or if she sees a lot of mistakes, she'll say, wait, let me go over this first, and then I'll let you correct your answers. Okay, so I think we've got a good example of that. The hardest one, Joel, to remember is the pair share. Usually when we start doing this with schools, the teachers, they don't have that automaticity of the pair share. So that's one you need to remember to do, is the pair share. All right, so let's go into the next part of this. Now, to ask the question, we just did it for concept development. Now, for skill development, it's different. In skill, you're actually calculating the volume, identifying the character. So your question is always, how did I, or how did you? Okay, how did I accomplish this? How did I solve it? How did I determine? How did I identify the value, determine the place value? And that's when you do it. And then when the next problem, when the students do one, so students, how did you do this? How do you know that's the character? How did you find the noun in the sentence? How do you think that, why do you think that's a simile or a metaphor? Okay, so the question is, how did I and how did you? So let's look at our example here. Where's my example? Okay, so we did concept development for prefixes, and we had our questions for prefixes. And then when we're going to solve them, we have some steps here. Generally, we have steps in EDI, and then we don't ask a CFU for every single step. I mean, they read the sentence, we reread the sentence at the end. We don't really need a question for that. Okay, so students, we've got some problems here. And look at right here, it's right at, how did I or how did you identify the words? How did you select the proper words? All right, so let's look, we've got some steps here. Let's read step one. Ready, go? Read the sentence. So we've got the sentence right here, and we'll just say blank for this. Let's read it. This is sandcastle. Ready, go? The sandcastle washed away, so we had to blank it. And let's read our choices. Ready, go? Rewrite, rebuild, retry, restate. Now remember, means to do again. So we have to write again, or build again, or try again, or state. And state means to say, to tell. State again. So now we're trying to decide. Let's look at number 2. Let's read, go. Identify clue words to determine which word to use. So we're going to underline that. So when it washed away, we had to, are we going to rewrite, rebuild, retry, or restate it? So if I look up here and I want to decide which word to use, I can't use the word sandcastle. Well, that's giving me a hint already. Actually, that is a good hint. Let's look what it says. Sandcastle, what? Washed away. And washed away, now I know, I don't have to use rewrite. I'm going to have to what? Rebuild. So this is the cue in the sentence that tells me not just the word sandcastle, not we had to, but the fact washed away is allowing me to make the decision of which one to use. Now, these are hard to do because if you haven't kind of modeled your thinking why you think that's the clue word right here to figure out which one to do. So the washed away allows me to decide that what we're going to have to do this, probably rebuild it again. Okay, so students, why do I think washed away is the clue to tell me which word that goes there? Okay, and let me finish the question and we'll go back to this one. So now it says select, which means what? To choose the correct word from the list. So when something is washed away, we're going to have to what? Rebuild it. We're not going to write it again. We're not going to try again. We're not going to say it again. We're going to have to rebuild it again. Okay. All right. So now my questions here, I'm kind of blending them together. How did I use this clue word to determine which word with a prefix to use. Let's see if you can explain that to your partners. Let's have the A's explain to B. How did I use the words in the sentence to determine which word to use? Which are our word with prefixes? So let's have the A's go. And so let me pick someone right now. How did I select the correct word with a prefix for this specific sentence?
So we selected the correct word because washed away tells you that it's gone. So you need to rebuild, which means build it again. You obviously make sure the parcel's back.
Okay, very good. Now, in a real classroom, you might call 2 or 3 students. I know you're giving the answer and you know it right away, but sometimes we call additional students just to have more students to vocalize and explain their thinking and use the logic and the words from the lessons. And the students' answers will get better as you ask 2 or 3. So don't just do 1. And I've asked 4 or 5 students sometime on a very sophisticated question. I just want a lot of people to vocalize. Okay, now the next one. Students, we're going up here, we're going to read, get the clue words and the proper word. Let's read together. Ready? I lost my report, so I had to blank it. Okay? So on your whiteboard, I want you to write the clue word and the proper word to go with it that has the prefix. Okay? Can you do that right now? Write the clue words and then write the word to fill in the blank. Okay, now remember the definition of prefixes. The prefix here means we're going to have to do again. So we're looking at sentence number 2, and we're trying to think, what are we going to have to do again? Okay, do you have your responses on your whiteboard? Okay, let's have the B's explain to A. What did they put as the clue word and the proper prefix, word with the prefix that we're going to have to do again?
I need to find.
Oh, wait, no, let's have a teacher come up, hold up the whiteboards and call somebody.
Everyone, show me your answers with your whiteboards. Sorry, I'm Liz, by the way. Sorry.
The clue word was lost, to tell you what happened to the report. So to get it in, you need to rewrite it.
Yeah, and I kind of modified this a little bit. I tried to get it more conceptual. We're trying to find what we have to do again, right? I lost my report, so I had to. So what do I have to do again if I lost my report? I can almost tell right here. I'm going to have to, rewrite it. That's what I'm going to do again. So we're not just taking this as a context clue to match a word to a sentence. We're trying to conceptually put the idea of the prefix in there. Okay, so let's just do the last part. Let's have the A partner do the third sentence, and you be the teacher, and then ask the students to write on their whiteboard, your partner to write on the whiteboard, have them show the board and write out. So who did I just say? B partner? B partner, you're going to be the teacher, just one-on-one with your partner, and do sentence number 3. And you're having them do it.
I'll try again.
Are we choosing another teacher to come up?
Okay, let's have a teacher come up. And now this time when you come up, I want you to do the whole thing. Read the sentence, then tell the students to write their clue word and their answer on their whiteboard, and then explain to their partner, and then have them show the boards and call out. So let's see if we can do the whole thing, all the way from reading, cueing them to write.
First, about what clue words that are in that sentence to help us answer that one.
Okay, so cue them to write on their whiteboard the context clue, what words they know to select, and then the word they're going to select. They should be writing 2 things on their whiteboard. So clue them to do that right now.
On our whiteboards, we're going to write our clue word. And then can I have B's please share with A's what your clue words are? Andrew, could you maybe explain to us what your partner said?
So I was saying Timothy Wordsworth missed the shot, which were that it was an action shot. Definitely fine, make it. So the words that retry. So it tends to be, if I miss the shot, I will retry it until I miss it.
And so what does retry mean? Can you tell me what it means using the prefix?
Attempting an action. Right. Oh, retry means sorry, I thought you meant try. Sorry, yeah, retry means attempting to do something again.
Yeah, I'm going to try it again. So try to tie these back conceptually and not just have the answer, that idea of what doing it again. This is the part here. The prefix has a consistent meaning, I think it says over here, a similar meaning in all words. In this case, means to do it again. Okay, I think we can see how we do this. Generally, we have groups of 2, one for the teacher to do, one for you to do. If we have 3, we can have the students do this on their own. They still get the pair share. But this is more structured, and then have them do another one. Then you can do this one right here, because we're using a different type of prefix here, and then have the students do the other 2. And you're guiding them through and holding up their whiteboard and showing their whiteboards.
Yeah, John, this is really important because we've seen this done before with the teachers sitting down quietly and the students are just filling it out as they go and the teacher's just explaining it. But with this interaction, we're really ratcheting up the thinking that's happening and the fact that you're challenging the students to help explain what's going on. That's higher order thinking.
The last one, the question for closure, can be, what did you learn today about? And you can write that for any type of lesson. It doesn't really matter what the lesson is. I can go back to my lesson we just had, which is right here. And I think the closure question, if it's in here, right here, what did you learn about determining the meanings of words using prefixes? Okay. And what did you learn about characters? What did you learn about nouns? And I like to have some word bank here. And when the students respond, they need to use some of the words in the word bank. For the older students, this can be like an exit ticket, or they write it. If they're taking notes or something, let them write it in their notes, because they actually have it there to keep to look at later. You can do it orally, or you could do it, on a whiteboard if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Now, John, what's your biggest aha moment about closure? Because for me, it feels like when we're done with the lesson, we do closure. But you have some new thoughts on that, don't you?
Well, the teachers used to think a closure was them summarizing the lesson, and you can do that. But the better closure is, can the students summarize the lesson, what they learned today? Now, this closure is not just a test to see if the students learned. It's really a cognitive strategy, because I want them to rethink about everything they had during the lesson. So explain to your partner your sentence. Let me hear a couple people. I'm going to call 2 or 3 people. I'm going to call another person to report out. I'm going to take a number of volunteers to report out. So it really is also a cognitive strategy to help you. Remember we said the brain research, to interact more with the material. Okay. All right. So now, while we're here, a long time ago, you wrote on your whiteboard something you were teaching. I don't know if you still remember that example. So see if you can now write me a question for closure. Okay, so what did you learn about characters? What did you learn about calculating volume? What did you learn about compare and contrast text structure? Okay, so see if you can write that question right now. So see if you can come up with your sentence and 1 or 2 word bank words. Oh, Joel, one of the things here is this is usually watching the clock. When you've got about 5 minutes left, no matter where you are in the lesson, you can jump right to this closure. You don't have to have finished the whole lesson.
Okay, that's gold, everyone. I hope you heard that. Everyone, really quick, like wherever you're at, 5 minutes to break or whatever it is, you stop what you're doing and you do a little closure. Mm-hmm. Always. No matter where you're at in the lesson, you always wrap it up with a little closure. That's great.
Yeah. And this is an easy one to even put together on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you've got the slide there, you can just click to it and jump to it. And then the next day you can pick up and, you can actually use the same closure again, because you've probably done more the second day you're teaching it. Okay, let's have a teacher come up and do our process here.
Okay, you're the teacher.
Q for the pair share, and make sure you tell A or B, explain your closure question to your partner. And then cue the pair share, and then boards up, and then call a couple of people to report out.
Okay. B's, can you tell A's what you learned about in your lesson today? What your question is. Okay, back to me. 3, 2, 1, 0. Not waterfall. Hands up, A's. Jade, can you tell me what your partner said to you? Louise, what did your partner say to you?
My partner had said, what did you learn about persuasive devices today?
Right, and what words were in her word bank?
Her word bank was rule of three and persuade.
Wonderful.
Okay, great. All right, so I think you can do this in any type of lesson. Just be ready to pull this up and to do it. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. The next one is easy to pair share. We've done this so many times, and now it's in our student engagement norms, and so we're going to do the pair share. We've done this a lot of times. This is one thing to remember. Give sentence frame before the pair share, so the students are using it during the pair share. Not just queuing when you call for the report outs. This way, every single student is using the new academic language during the pair share when they go back and forth, because you can't call everyone. And I think we've done this several times. Make sure we justify our answer. Usually the sentence frame, something is something because ... I usually have that because, or justify their answer, or how do you know? So make sure we've done all those. So I think we know how to do these too. And this is where the attention signal comes in, really is at the end of the pair share. All right, so let's look at the next one. Now, the second P, pick a non-volunteer. Okay, and I've seen a lot of you do it. Generally, pointing to students randomly is hard to do. You're better to have an app on your phone, on the computer, popsicle sticks, slips of paper, playing card, have something. It really works better, okay, to have an actual mechanical system to do it. I think I mentioned last time, when you pull the sticks, make sure you put the stick back in every time. If you start laying the sticks to the side, the students know it's got to be the whole class before they get called again. And if you put the sticks back in, I guarantee within a day or two, you'll pull the same stick twice in a row. And you just say, well, you just called me. I said, well, you've got to be ready. You could come up anytime. I'll give you a couple of hints in a few minutes about faking the stick. We don't always do the exact number. If we have some very struggling students, you're better to let them be the second or third pick and not the first pick. And so if you pull a struggling student, you can just kind of pull another stick out and be ready and then work them in as a second or third. And the other one is you purposely pull struggling students as a second or third or even fourth pull, even if you don't pull their sticks, because you want them to be part of the group too and let them be successful. And they can use that little scaffolding by hearing other answers first. Now, don't raise our hands. That means we don't use the traditional where the hands go up and we call the same 3 students the whole year. If you want to take volunteers after you've made the statistical sampling to see that the students are following and understanding. So would anyone else like to volunteer or add something to it? And then you can add a couple right there. But you've got to use statistical sampling. When you take the hand wavers, you're not doing statistical sampling if you need to reteach. All right, so let's go to the next one. Now, listen. We're going to listen to the responses. Now, that should be listen and look, because you could look at the whiteboards if we've got the whiteboards. So now you want to be able to make instructional decisions. So let's just look at the basic ones. Let's see if we can read these 4 right here. The instructional decision to what? Speed up, slow down. Also teach to 80%, and that's easy to look at with the whiteboards. And let's read the next part. Corrective feedback to 100%. So usually I say that the responses tell you whether to speed up, slow down, or reteach. Remember, we didn't use opinions that students think they're learning. We actually listen to their responses, and a random sampling makes it statistically valid. And of course, with the whiteboard, you're actually seeing everybody. So I think now the next part we're doing is we're getting ready to go to the effective feedback. Let's look at a couple of big ideas. Then let's read the big ideas. We're getting ready to do feedback. So let's read the first bullet. Ready, go? Distinguish between whole class errors and individual student errors. You may not be 100% correct every single time, but you can be pretty close after you started calling. When you realize the first student is confused, the second student is confused, a lot of people are confused, then the whole class, that's a reteach cue. When 1 or 2 students have the wrong answer, that's when we start using our cues. We're cueing and prompt that one student in real time to pull them along. So I think you can get that, the reteach the whole class right here, 2 wrong answers, reteach, or especially 3 wrong answers. That's the idea. When you get a lot of wrong answers, it's the whole class. When the whiteboards come up and you see 50% errors, it's reteach the whole class, okay? Now, when the whiteboards come up and almost everyone's got the correct answer and 1 or 2 students have the wrong answer, then you're going to give feedback to, call students and give feedback to those. Keep this in mind also, we're asking a higher order question to the entire class, and then we're going to differentiate our responses. So the differentiating can be what? I'll come back to you, I'll give you extra time, explain your thinking. We can do that, but we don't drop the original question. Try to keep the original question up there as a grade level type of question. Now, here's a good one right here. Let's read this one together. Ready to go? Students are never allowed not to know the answer. They're going to know the answer either by you reteaching or cueing them or re-explaining to them or something. So, and there's not going to be any of this students try to opt out. I don't know if you've seen that. The quiet student in the back who just tries not to make trouble, hope they'll never be called upon. And the sticks will solve that because you're distributing your questions around there. And the student just can't say, I don't know. Joel, I remember I saw that in a class one time in Los Angeles. And this teacher's actually trained his kids, I think, because he'd call and I don't know. Next student, I don't know. He would go through 6 or 8 students with I don't knows before he would actually get an answer. Mm-hmm. And finally I said, you've just trained your kids. They know they can just say, I don't know, and then you'll just move on. Mm-hmm. And actually, we could stop that right here. I'll come back to you. I told him, I said, you need to give that just the shake up the whole guy and be ready. Now, everybody's got to participate and be ready. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's look at some of these right here. The first one, let's read our first option, go. Provide cues and prompts. And this is kind of the natural way teachers teach. When students can't answer, they try to give hints. And Joel, let's not give out the sound like hints. You know, what's it called? A noun. You know, doing the word is not right. The cue for noun should be what? The gesture would be a good one. Okay. So the cues and prompts, 30 seconds or less. If you just keep on a student, you keep trying to get the answer. If it's, remember the brain research, if it's not in their memory, you can't recall it. So you do, these cues and prompts just can't go on forever. I've seen teachers try to cue and prompt and extract an answer from a student way too long. Mm-hmm. So you need to come up with something else. Okay. And a good one is the gesture. And another cue and prompt can be tell where to look. Can you look in paragraph 1? Can you look at the table on the side? Can you look over there at the word wall? Can you look down at your whiteboard? Look at sentence number 2. Okay. So these are like very specific ideas. Now, here's another one you can do as a teacher. And I know we have problems with the multiplication facts is one. And almost every school has the multiplication facts like scotch tape to the table or up on the wall or something, 6 times 8. And you can look up there, the 6 and the 8 columns and get 48. Mm-hmm. Now, what you need to do as a teacher is use that resource yourself. So students, I see we're calculating the area and it's 6 times 8. Let me check the board. I'm going to 6 and I'm going down to 8. Yeah. The area is 48 inches in this time square inches. So even though you don't need to, you should model yourself looking at the table, looking at the wall, using the hints on the side, looking at the footnotes and anything in there that you want your students to do the same thing.
Yeah, John, I was going to say 100% correct because you know the word wall banks that you're talking about on the wall, yeah, those become invisible to teachers because they see them every day. So we're going to model it. We're going to think something. We're going to point to something. I'm going to say it out loud. We're always pointing at something, aren't we? Go ahead, John. I didn't mean to block you there. Go ahead.
Actually, that word wall could almost be the concepts you teach during the year. You know, cause and effect, main idea, character setting. You could have those words on the wall and do it. And, you know, there's a little funny research here. When you give the state tests, you have to cover those things on the wall so they can't look at them. And a lot of people say the kids look up there at the blank wall and still get the answers. It triggers your brain somehow. So I don't know about that. But anyway, the idea that we've got places to look and model those. Okay. Mm-hmm. So now let's just do this. Let's have the A's explained to be, how can you use some cues and prompts in your classroom? Okay. And use some of this information that you just learned right here. So go to A's. I can use cues and prompts by. All right, Vanessa, can you just call a couple of people just from where you're standing?
Sarah, how do you use, I've already almost lost my words, cues and prompts?
Also show them where to actually find it.
Well done. You've used 3 out of the 4. Thank you.
Okay, good. It's hard to hear all of that, but I think I get the idea. give them resources to look at, use the gesture so that the cue actually helps them do something, not the sounding out the word, but actually helps them get it. Okay, so now let's look at the second one. I mentioned this once before. Let's read together. I'll come back to you. This is a really great one. You just need to have it in your head. If you don't have it and you don't think about it and haven't used it, sometimes you're kind of stuck. We don't want to be stuck. We want to have something when students can't answer, we've got something. So this is a good one. Announce you're going to come back to them. Call in a couple of students, ask those students to explain their answers, justify their answers, and then go back to the first student. Now, here's one hint. When you say, I'm going to come back to you, don't call the partner. Because usually if they pair shared, if one is wrong, they might both be wrong, okay? And don't pull a stick and call someone on the opposite side of the room that might be hard to hear. So usually I just kind of pick someone. I'm going to come back to you, and I just pick someone kind of close by. I said, can you explain your answer? Okay. Now, Joel, when we first started this, we trained the students at this, and we had a cue. The students could say, I will listen carefully while you call another student. So we actually trained the students that they could use this. Okay, and there was nothing wrong with using it. The last part I've got here, useful for classroom management. When a student just say, I don't know, I don't care, I'm not going to answer, then you say, I'm going to come back to you. And it kind of puts a little pressure back on that they've got to be ready. They're not getting out of it. Remember, all students have to answer. There's no getting out of it. So I think we can see this. This is a good one. This I'll come back to you is a great strategy. We had never thought of it before. And Joel, when we first started making videos, we did not have these feedback strategies, and we got stuck when students couldn't answer. So now we have strategies. When students can't answer, you've got something ready to go. All right, let's look at the next one. Number 3 up here, ready to go. De-escalate to multiple choice. Okay, so we're just going to rephrase the question to 2 options. Now, see, when you say, what is a noun? Okay, they have to recall the whole definition. When you give the question, is a noun a word that names a person, place, or thing, or is a noun an action word? Now they just have to recognize the answer. Okay, is the setting where the story takes place or the people in the story? Okay, you see that? So it's easier to come up with because they can recognize it as opposed to having to come up with it on your own. And I've got an example here. Let's read together. What is an acute angle? So students, let me rephrase that. Is an acute angle less than 90 degrees or greater than 90 degrees? Let's see, I wonder if you can write a de-escalate question on your own. Okay, let me give you an example. What's a prefix? And they said, I've forgotten. Is it, okay, the prefix letters added to the beginning of a word to change its meaning or letters added at the end of a word to change its meaning? What's a verb? I forgot. Oh, is a verb something that shows action or is it name a person, place, or thing? So see if you can write 2 questions on your whiteboard right now. It's sort of a generic question and then a de-escalated question. Now this is what you're actually calling an individual student. You're trying to differentiate for struggling students. And people don't quite get that you're dropping the difficulty down a little bit, but not for the whole class. You're just doing it on the fly. So see, you can see my example right here. What's an acute angle? Okay. And so see if you can write a question on your whiteboard and an example of a de-escalation to multiple choice. De-escalate, make it easier or smaller. Okay, go ahead. Okay, I think I'll just cue the pair share right there. Can you explain your answer to your partner and explain how the question is and how the de-escalate simplifies it to 2 choices? All right, Vanessa, can you just call one person to report out their question and their de-escalated question?
Mel Belvin, can you please share your question and then your de-escalated question?
We were trying to think of a question about something relating to what we were teaching today. So we chose what is a rhetorical question? And then we said, is it a question that makes you think but not have to answer? Or is it something that makes you feel?
Okay, yeah, that'll work. All right, look at number 4 here. Let's read it. Explain your thinking. So when students have an incorrect answer, don't just say you're wrong. I say, you have a different answer on your whiteboard. Can you explain your answer to me? Okay. And sometimes the students will often self-correct when they start explaining and they're thinking, and then they say, oh, wait, I did the wrong problem. Oh, wait, I was thinking wrong. Oh, I did this wrong. And the other thing, when students explain, you discover some misunderstandings in the classroom, some conceptual errors they've got, and then you can clarify that on the spot. Okay, so the two choices with explain your thinking is what allow the students to self-correct. Of course, then you can correct them, and then to see if there's some generic misunderstandings. So be ready to do that, and that's almost like justify your answer. I see you've got a different answer. Can you explain your answer? Okay, this is the last ditch. Okay, if students, you've come back to them, you've tried to de-escalate, you're running out of options, the last one is just to read the answer with you. So you can do it as like an echo read and just have them read the answer with you, or you read it first and they read afterwards. So just do that. And some people say, well, you're just giving them the answer. And I said, well, at least they're getting one repetition. Remember, the repetition is to get a long-term memory. They're hearing you saying it, and then what they're actually having to say it, and you've run out of options. You can work with individual students afterwards, but this allows you to keep the class going. You don't have anybody stuck that doesn't. Now, classroom management, this is the last ditch when the students say, I don't want to answer, I don't know, I don't care. And you say, you know what, we're just going to read it together. Let's just you and I read it. A prefix is, your turn, a prefix is, letters or letters, just read it like that. Sometimes I've done it to let me answer for you, or I'll say what you were going to say. I know this because you just want to keep the class going. So the classroom management is a little bit of advantage to this also. All right, let's look at the next one. Let's read together. Ready, go. 2 wrong answers reteach the entire class. Remember, we're trying to do the difference between individual students. That's this right here. Explain your thinking, de-escalate, I'll come back to you. Now we're talking about for the whole class. So usually you need to reteach when you get 2 or 3 wrong answers. Joel, I've seen teachers call 4 or 5 or 6 kids trying to get the answer because they're trying to move the class forward. They think they can move forward when they finally found the answer, but you don't want to move forward till the students know the answer. And that sometimes requires a reteaching. So if you're de-escalating and coming back, you need to reteach. Less than 80% in the whiteboards, you need to do it. Now, don't forget that if you reteach or do something, you need to go back on the same students who couldn't do it before. So after you've retaught, you may call a couple of new students and then go back and call the students who couldn't answer also. So be ready to do that. So really talking between the whole class reteaching and these individual ones. All right, let's go on to the next one. Let's read it. Ready to go? Pair share again. Actually, Joel, you know how boring this has got? Because we've stopped all the student interaction. I'm just reading it and everybody's listening. So we're going to have a little pair share right now in a second here. Okay, now the pair share again works if the class is fairly close. If everyone's confused, there's no traction to pair share. There's not enough knowledge between the two partners. But when you're close, or a lot of students are not using the sentence frame correctly, quite often I say, let's pair share one more time. I want to hear everyone practice the sentence frame we're going to use. So I think I've got a question coming up here. Let's see if I've got it here. Get your whiteboards out and write down 1 or 2 of these feedback strategies. And be ready to say the feedback strategies I like are blank. And then be ready to tell me why you've picked them. So think about your own teaching, your own students. So let's do this. Let's just do it right now. Everybody write 1 or 2 of those on their whiteboard and explain to your partners the 2 effective feedback strategies you're going to use and why you selected those. The strategy I will use are blank because. All right, I think we better have an additional pair share before we start this. Let's have the A partner explain the first one, the B partner explain the second one, A do the third. So explain to your partner every other one what those mean. So go back and forth. Let the A, then the B, then the A, then the B till you get all the way down to pair share. So just spend a minute, explain to your partner what those mean and when you might use them, and then go back and make sure you've got the 2 you pick. So let's do that. Part of the pair share right now is just explain what they are. Go ahead. Okay, we all done it?
Yeah, I was just watching. That's the pair share really impacts teacher, our engagement levels as well, because, you know, after, I know it's later for you in the evening, but we were starting to tire. And as soon as you said it's time to pressure, everybody picked up again. So it does create that accountability and engagement in thinking. So it was great to see with us.
You can see the problem if I talk too long. It really doesn't take very long. It's a couple of minutes, and you may think you're not talking that long, but if you're talking more than a few minutes, it's actually too long. Okay, can you call people to raise their boards and read out a couple of things they picked for the effective feedback strategy they would like to use?
Thanks, Janet. Andrew, you please share one of your strategies. One of your preferred strategies.
So one of my preferred strategies that I like is the explain thinking, just because then that way it's giving students opportunities to share what they've understood. So as well, it's a good opportunity for maybe some students who look a completely different way, but no one ever highlights that. Oh, you didn't think of it that way. Well done.
All right, I think we're ready for the last question. Let's just jump up to right here. Okay, we did the checking understanding the TAPL, the teach first, ask the question, pair share, pick a non-volunteer, listen, and the effective feedback. And we just did the effective feedback right here. We did this 7 strategies. Last time we did the student engagement strategies also. Okay. So now, how will you apply checking for understanding and effective feedback in your class? So this is going to be similar to the last question I gave you. Pick a couple things off of this entire page.
All right, get your thoughts down, everyone. Got to give you about 30 seconds. Get your thoughts down, everyone.
I think we're ready. Let's see the whiteboards right now. All right, Vanessa, just call a couple people. The strategies I will use are blank and blank and why you picked them.
Megan, can you please share your 2 each? I like them. I like what you wrote. So, Megan, if you and why you wrote them.
The strategies I chose was teach first, don't use who knows, which I used today, and elaborate. And 2 wrong answers reteach, and I chose those because I think they will make the most impact in my classroom at the moment.
Annie, didn't know if I told you that. Everyone to go?
So I said that the strategies that will improve my teaching is doing effective feedback. So just really any of them. I really love the de-escalate to multiple choice and that explain your thinking, just so I can really see what they're getting.
All right. So I suppose now that you've all, I did, when you were chinning up, I did read what you wrote and you've all set some great goals there. So if you could, think about right now what you're going to do in the next 24 hours to change your teaching. Then what are you going to do in the next 7 days before we meet with John and Joel again? And then what are you going to look like as a teacher in 1 month's time when you've employed all of these strategies? So 24, 7, and 1. So you wrote goals, you said what you liked, and we are going to be, as leaders, asking you in corridors at planning, what's your 24, what's your 7, what's your 1, and we're going to keep that on the cards. So I hope that's what you were meaning when you say you wanted me to wrap it up.
Yeah, that's great. No, it's you know, that's something that's good. You have the plan, you have a goal, everyone has it. Everyone speaks the same language, everyone's doing great. That's wonderful. Well, John, I think we're done here for this evening. I guess I'll see you. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you guys had a good time today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.